Welcome to the Black Girls Heal podcast, where we talk about changing unavailable relationship patterns, healing unresolved trauma, and building a healthy relationship with first you and then others. Every episode, we will talk about actionable advice that you can apply today to break unhealthy patterns and grow your self-worth. I'm Sheena Tubbs. Let's begin. Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of Black Girls Heal. I am so happy to be in front of this microphone today to send you all happiness and joy, or wishes of happiness and joy wherever you are. So this week I have one of my favorite people, Alfred from Balanced Black Girl, on the podcast talking about the importance of self-care. Just with all of the things that April has brought us, I think just more time talking about taking care of ourselves, taking space for ourselves, loving on ourselves is what we need right now. And she is the perfect person to talk about it. She gave so many gems. She gave so many examples of what self-care is that is not based in any of the cookie cutter things that we typically can just list off, but it's the things that we need to know. I felt challenged. I felt stretched. I felt seen, and I am just so happy that she's going to share those tips and tools with us here in the podcast. Before we jump into that, I just want to share that the Healed and Loved Woman membership that I have been talking about for a while is open. I didn't want to talk about it too much with the last few episodes because of the content. I just wanted it to be able to have the space that it needed to have. But y'all, we had our first workshop this past Sunday where I taught women about finding and using your voice in relationships. I talked about where the difficulty in doing that comes from. I talked about how to shift your mindset, and also gave women a challenge to work through over the coming month and practice using their voice, practice building the mindset and building the tools around what they will need to use their voice. And what I love about the membership is I actually get to support women throughout the month with the challenge until the next month when there's a new workshop, when there's a new topic about really leaning into your love worthiness as a healed and loved woman. For those of you who are new listeners of the podcast, we have our own framework here. We have our own framework that builds into us learning how to be fully connected to ourselves and fully open and available in our relationships with our loved ones. We talk about becoming love balanced instead of love addicted, love available instead of love avoidant, and also leaning into our love worthiness instead of depriving ourselves of those things, instead of depending on other people and outside experiences and outside situations to give those things to ourselves. And so what the membership is actually not the same thing as our main coaching program, which is the Recovery School, which you've probably heard me talk about a lot because that's our big private program. But the membership is really built to be something that every woman can participate in. That is a smaller step with a monthly workshop that talks about these concepts, that breaks it down for you, and also helps build sisterhood and community. So after our workshop this Sunday, I give the option for women to stick around to get broken into breakout sessions with other women. I really talk a lot about the importance of healing in community when it comes to healing intimacy disorders, when it comes to healing our attachment wounds. So many of us are like, okay, I'm going to get myself right, and then I'm going to try to build friendships, and then I'm going to start trusting other people and letting them in, but that's backwards. We have to start leaning into other people and finding out that the water is safe, finding out that we are not going to burn ourselves, finding out that we can actually pick people who are good for us and that people will actually respond to us. But what really helps with that is if we start with a safe space, if we start with like-minded women. And so if you listen to episode 55, when I broke down what is a healing circle, I talked about the steps. There's a free download for you to incorporate that into your life. There's a workbook on Amazon for you to talk about these different topics with women in your group. In addition to all that, we have a free directory where you can connect with other women and get to know other women who are also looking for someone to connect with. I know that's the same word, but I'm having a hard time using my vocabulary today, but looking for other women who want to build this experience together. And as I've shared before, I know that that's also a little bit daunting, right? Like to literally have to message someone and say, hey, can I be in your group? No matter what age you are, that can be very bringing you back to childhood, bringing you back to middle school, bringing out those insecurities and fear of rejection, and especially personalizing if someone doesn't respond to you, even if it's just the fact that they didn't see the message or just different things that I've noticed as we've built that free resource. And so what I love about the membership is that it has created this space where women were in this workshop. They were all cheering each other on and saying, me too, and encouraging each other and saying, what you said makes sense, and validating each other while I'm teaching. And then they stayed around some of the ladies decided to stay around in a group and get to know each other more. And I gave them discussion questions, and they stayed for over an hour after the workshop was over, just talking. And so it was just such a great first workshop. I look forward to supporting the women who share in our membership, who continue to grow as we grow together over the next year, and then celebrating with them at our Healed and Loved Women dinner, because we're going to start having events as the world opens back up, and our dinner will be a members only event. But all that to say, y'all, I want you to join the membership. I want that if you have been following Black Girls Heal for a while, if you have been like, I have been wanting to learn more outside of the podcast, outside of the workbooks, outside of the freebies, and you either have not been able to because you don't have the time to, because you have not had the resources to participate in our bigger program, the membership is literally built to be that next step for women who may have hurdles, whatever they may be, but are committed to their growth. So you can learn more about the Healed and Loved Women membership by going to blackgirlsheal.org/membership, reading about it, seeing if it's your jam, seeing if it's the right fit for you. And if it is, I would love to see you there. The current replay from this month's workshop is still there until next month. And then we have a whole new topic, y'all. So I would not procrastinate if you want to learn about finding and using your voice, stepping out of codependency, and showing up as your full self. So that's it for my plug. And y'all, can't wait for you to hear this episode. And I want to know what you are challenged with. And it's gonna make sense as you listen to it. But I would love to hear. I would love for y'all to DM me, email me afterwards if you remember this ask, to let me know what is the thing that you are going to step out and do for yourself that maybe you have been too afraid to do before listening. So that's it. Let's go ahead and jump into this week's podcast. All right. So today on the podcast, I have Les Alfred. Hello, Les.
Hi, Sheena. Thank you for having me.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for being here. You have been one of my first online friends, and I'm also someone who I'm constantly learning from and being inspired by around boundaries, around self-love, around pride, even as a Black woman. And so I'm so excited just to have you here on the podcast and connecting with my audience.
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, honestly, I could say the same and more about you. I'm so inspired by you and your work. So it's always an honor when I get to talk to you.
Awesome. Well, many of you may know Les as the Balanced Black Girl, but I'm going to let her introduce herself and to all of you who may not know who she is.
Yes, my name is Les. I am a former personal trainer and a wellness content creator. I am also a podcaster. I have a podcast called Balanced Black Girl, where I interview incredible Black women health and wellness experts. Sheena has been a guest on our show. Truly one of our most popular episodes, Sheena. I don't know if you know that, but people love your episode. And I'm really all about creating safe spaces to have conversations with Black women about the different ways that we can pour into ourselves.
Awesome. Great. So, one of the things, and I'm just going to jump right into it because I've
Yeah.
been like ready for it all day. One of the things that you do such a great job talking about is self care, and the place it should have in our life. So, I want to start off by asking, why is self care important to talk about? Why is it a great topic to focus on?
I love that question. I think self care is something that we have to continuously talk about because it's something that we need to constantly keep in the forefront of our minds. It's not
Mm.
something that is kind of in addition to, or, once we get everything productive done, then we can focus on self care. It's like the approach to self care has to be embedded into everything that we do. And the way we make that happen is to talk about it and have really open, honest conversations about it and to share tips and tricks and share what we're doing and what's working and what's not working so that we can continue evolving in the way we take care of ourselves.
Mm. I love that. And one of the things that really stands out to me are the words continuously and consistently, and how that looks as we evolve. Because when we think about self care, it's not having one set routine or, like you said, tips and tricks that we put into place and we're set. But as we grow, as we learn, as we heal, self care may look differently for us.
100%. I mean, I think for all of us, self care probably looked drastically different a year ago, pre pandemic than it has for the past year that we've lived in, right? So we constantly have to be adapting how we take care of ourselves based off of what we need.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so $1 million question. How would you define self care?
Yeah, I would define self care as being in tune with what your needs are and either meeting those needs yourself or seeking out the help you need to help you meet those needs.
Could you say that again? That just felt so good.
Yeah, I actually had a moment. I mean, a moment. I've had many moments where I'm like, I'm almost tired of taking care of myself. Can someone else step in and help take care of
Mm,
some of these things for me? Because sometimes even self-care, if we're doing it all, can feel like work, and remembering that a big part of self-care can also be asking for help, can also be asking for support, and allowing ourselves to receive support from others is a big piece of the puzzle that I know I'm still working on, and I think a lot of us can probably relate.
yeah. Yeah, can we focus on that a little bit more? What does it look like practically to delegate self-care?
Definitely. I think one of my biggest learnings, and I'm still in the process of learning, is that things that I want, whether it is wanting to move my business in a certain direction or wanting to feel better or wanting, to feel a certain way emotionally, that results don't always have to come from me doing things, like me being
Mm,
actively in some sort of task, that I can receive support from other people and still get there, whether it is something in my business that I can delegate to someone else, or whether that is instead of me trying to solve every problem myself, finding someone that I trust who I can talk to and get support in a certain situation to still get there, maybe even get to where I'm trying to go faster, or get to somewhere else that could be an even better result than what I could have thought of on my own.
Mm-hmm. And I think another part of that is if it's hard for you to know how to share the load, when people offer to help, that your immediate answer is yes. I
Mm-hmm.
remember the other day, I can't remember what exactly was going on, but I was very stressed because I think I had to take my son to the doctor and I had to get groceries and I had some emails that had been piling up. And I was just running around my house. And my sister is watching my son right now during quarantine. And I was just very frazzled. And she looked at me and she said, you know, Sheena, whenever Aiden wakes up from his nap, we can go to the grocery store for you. It's totally fine. And we can just make it be an outing. And I was like, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And the old me, though, may have said yes, but even if she did say yes, she would have felt so much guilt and a burden and had a lot of shame that she wasn't able to handle it. And this time I was like, yes, help. I receive it because it should
Yeah.
not be this stressful. Life should,
Mm-hmm.
we deserve to have more ease and peace in our life.
I love that example. And I'm so glad that you were able to receive that help.
Hmm. Yeah, it's taken a lot of lessons and a lot of hurdles and a lot of medical appointments because of the impact of how stress just manifests in our bodies for me to finally realize this cape is heavier
Yeah.
than it needs to be, and I'm just going to put it down
Yep.
and I'm going to
Exactly.
choose to relax as much as I
Yes.
can.
Exactly.
Hmm. Yeah, something else you said in your definition of self care that rang out to me made me think about self care involving emotional nourishment as well. So, not just the actions that people typically think about with self care, but how do I take care of my feelings? How do I soothe or parent or whatever word people use when it comes to your healing work? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Definitely. And I would say this above probably any other form of self care is a big one that I am working on, because it does not come second nature to me to feel comfortable going to people and expressing my emotions or expressing sadness and, whatever. But it is so, so important that we are able to do so, that we are able to feel free to express any emotion, across the board, because our ability to express those things and to feel how we feel and to honor our feelings, it's so important for us. It's so important.
Hmm. So, how would you suggest, feel free to share anything from your story or something that you've seen people in your audience do, but how would someone start the process of figuring out where their emotions lie in their body, what they're feeling, how to listen to them? What would you say?
Definitely. Something that's been really helpful for me is getting to the root and really understanding why I don't feel comfortable expressing emotions. And that's just kind of my example, because that's been my lived experience, is figuring out, well, where did that come from? Well, when did I start doing that? Do I notice that I do it in some circumstances and not others? And why is that? And I think getting really curious with ourselves about why we maybe fall into some of the same patterns that we do, and start looking for kind of information around when that happens, because it usually is a pattern where we can probably think of multiple examples where we're not really honoring ourselves and honoring our feelings, and just getting a really good understanding of where we're at, not coming from a place of judgment with ourselves, but really coming from a place of curiosity, like, huh, why do I do this? Where did this
Hmm.
start? Why do I continue to do this? I wonder what would happen if I did it differently the next time I felt this. And I think really having that sense of curiosity has been super helpful for me, and not having a place of judgment.
Yeah. Yeah. What else about self-care do we need to know?
So, one of the things that we kind of touched on is self care changing over time and what we need for self care changing over time. But I think that that's super important. And I want to really reiterate that. And something that I know I've noticed personally, I started getting into wellness and started embarking on my wellness journey when I was in college. The
Mhm.
summer before my junior and senior year of college were a really big turning point for me. And that's what got me really interested in wellness. So when I was 20, and what I did for wellness as a 20-year-old is so vastly different a decade plus later. And if I were still trying to force myself to have those practices that my 20-year-old self had, or have the body that my 20-year-old self had, or to have my body respond to things in the same way, now, it would be a really frustrating, defeating experience. And also remembering that over time, not only does what we need change, but our responses to how we practice self-care changes. And so we have to constantly just be looking for information about, like, does this fit where I'm at right now? Is this good for me? Is this not good for me? And being willing to try different things and evolve in our self-care journeys is huge.
Mhm. Being willing to change your mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm. And being willing, are you into human design?
I am. I love human design.
Yeah. What is your overtype?
I'm a manifesting generator.
Of course, so am I. So,
Yes. I love it.
so one of the things, and I actually think it might have been, I don't know why I should be like human design. It might have been one of your guests that first kind of like planted a seed that bloomed later on. But one of the things I've had to learn with self care and routines, being a manifesting generator, is to let go of this pressure for consistency,
Mm-hmm.
because us as manifesting generators, we are creative, we like variety, we are so connected to our sacral and like what feels good for us intuitively in the moment. And so what's actually nurturing to me is to be able to wake up and say, okay, do I want to meditate right now, or do I want to script, or do I want to exercise, or do I need another 5 minutes and then to get up, instead of being very legalistic.
100%. I could not agree more. Yeah. And there's some people who, for them, it's like it's the opposite. They need that super structured thing. And so I think it's that reminder that what we're doing and how we take care of ourselves, even if it doesn't feel good in the moment, because there are also some parts of self-care that just aren't going to feel good while you're doing it, right? Like a therapy feels good after, maybe, depending on what you're working through. But sometimes in those
Mm-hmm.
sessions, like, it doesn't necessarily feel good. Or if you're doing a workout, you might feel good after, but while you're doing it, it may not feel good. But ultimately, it should lead to something that does feel more positive. And so when things do feel very like restrictive or just kind of against how you want to operate, that's like a really good sign to maybe switch something up, whether that is understanding your human design, which, I mean, I'm a nerd for things like that, so I highly recommend, or just figuring out like how different routines vibe with you. Understanding what works is so helpful.
Mm-hmm. And to that point, I think by doing self care is how you get to know yourself. So it's not like you get to know yourself and then you create your self care routine or practices all the time. But by doing is where you start to understand what fits and what doesn't fit. Um, I know one of the things that I really try to teach our audience is when it comes to communities and people that you learn from, to just take that as inspiration and not as a cookie cutter mold that you need to follow, because like you said earlier, what someone else needs could be the complete opposite of what works for you, and that's okay, no matter how much you may admire them.
For sure. Oh, that's such good advice.
Yeah, so we've talked about in the realm of self care, we talked about emotional nourishment, we talked about the ability to receive help, to live in peace as aspects of self care. You talked a little bit about working out. Are there any other domains of self care that would be important for people to consider as they're looking to discover more about this?
Definitely. I would say another area of self care that I have also been kind of challenging myself to do more of, and people may not think of it as self care, but I've started thinking of it as self care, is really looking at things that I've told myself I can't do, or things that I think I can't do, or that I'm not good at, or that I am afraid of doing because I'm not good at, trying anyway and letting
Oh,
myself be bad at things. And I think for people who are perfectionists, which is probably a lot of us, I think in both of our audiences can probably relate. We have these women who are just, they're high achievers, and they carry the loads and they do the things, and we can sometimes be a little bit afraid if we do things that we're not good at, or where we can't be perfect at something. Allowing ourselves to go back and kind of be a student. Like when you're a kid, you don't really care that much how good you are at coloring. You just color because you like to do it, right? Or you play something because you like
mm,
to play it. And giving myself room to be a student and to play and to do things just because I want to do them, but maybe have no intention of getting good at them has also
mhm.
been a really big part of self-care.
Les, you're all up in my business. I feel I feel personally attacked because how dare you tell me to do something I'm not already perfect at?
I know it's
Oh,
scary. Honestly, just today at work, I mean, I have to be honest, y'all. I'm kind of a more of a creative. I'm not like the analytical type. And I have, see, even that right there, even me saying that is such a limiting belief. But in the past, I have felt very intimidated by analytical things and spreadsheets. And I have some work at my job right now that I have to do. It involves going through spreadsheets and analyzing data and making recommendations. And I can't weasel my way out of it the way I've been able to in my career thus far. I
mhm,
have to do it. And so even today, I was like, okay, I have some time this afternoon. It's just me and this spreadsheet. Like, how about I teach myself a few features of this program that honestly, I probably should have learned to do a decade ago, but whatever, that I Googled and taught myself how to do today. And it was the most basic Excel functions, but I was so proud of myself when I just gave myself time to just learn how to do it and not beat myself up over the fact that I didn't know how to do it.
mhm. I love that for you. And see, this is such a great example of how knowing yourself can really be impactful, because as I'm listening to tell that story, I'm so happy for you and inspired, but I also feel my feet shaking and I feel a little sweaty, and I know that that means that there's something deeper going on for me to examine, right? Like that
Yeah.
response is not typical. But in the past, I would be numb to that, and I might go and eat some food, or I might go and, you know, have sex or do something else to distract myself from the moment. So
Yeah.
love that. I'll give you an update if I challenge myself with the thing I have in mind. But
Yeah, please do. I would love
yeah,
to hear about that experience for you. And it can be so scary to do those things where it's like, ooh, I know my lane, I know what I'm good at, and I stick to that. But I would love to hear what comes up for you if you decide to try those
yeah,
things.
yeah. I actually think I'm gonna share it if that's okay. Now that
Oh
I'm kind of
yeah.
playing in my mind, because I think, as I'm thinking about what it is, I think all the things that we're probably afraid of doing are really just all. It's just a checklist of all the things that we need to reclaim that's always been inside of us. So the thing for me is dancing. I have always loved to dance. I've always loved music, but I am not naturally a good dancer. And I grew up with a lot of insecurity about like my body and how I looked. And so that definitely manifested in the freedom that I had with how I carried myself. And my sisters were both dancers as well. So then like the comparison of like the younger me and like they're such good dancers and I'm not, and just it all just folded on top of each other. But I know that me reclaiming this, one, because it is a deep desire that I have to be able to dance and be free and, move and twerk and do all the things that I want to do, right? But not only just for me as a person, but like just thinking about internalized oppression and like being able to reclaim my body as a Black woman and be free and be seen. There's just many layers to it. And I need to walk in that. And I need to put myself out there and not want to do secret dance lessons in my room until I can hit all the moves before I go to a dance class or whatever it is I have in my head.
I so appreciate you sharing that, Sheena, and being vulnerable about that. I can wholeheartedly relate and have such a similar experience when it comes to dancing and relationship to dancing. And let's check in with each other and keep each other accountable and see how we're doing at just trying it out.
I would love that. Yes, yes. Awesome. Okay, so I love, by the way, that that was not like a typical cookie cutter response. And
Hmm.
I think that's what we need, right? Is to grow beyond what we've been told self care is.
Oh, totally. I mean, honestly, when I think about self care, and I know I had kind of touched on the definition of what I think it is earlier, but I also think it's important to think about what we want to gain from self care. Like for me, I practice self care to feel more confident and to feel like I'm kind of stepping into myself and stepping into my abilities more and like I'm able to show up more. And for me at least, nothing builds more confidence than doing things that I thought I once couldn't do, and really stepping into my power, even if it's something as small and dumb as like an Excel function or learning a dance combo. Because I've definitely, like I said, feel the same way about dancing. And in quarantine, I've definitely done plenty of like virtual dance classes because I thought, perfect, now nobody can see me. And this is a
Mm-hmm.
safe space. And even just learning an 8 count, in your room, like the confidence that comes from that of when I first saw this, I didn't think I could do it. And then I did it. Like that to me, I think are important aspects of self care that we don't talk about because it can be very easy to focus on some of the external, right? To think about things like face masks and getting our hair done and getting our nails done. And all those things are great. I'm also not going to talk down on any of those things. But there are other pieces of the puzzle that we can add to those things as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great. Well, are there any other things for us to keep in mind, or as far as like behaviors or actions, even though I just totally said, let's forget about the actions. Just for any other practical things to keep in mind?
Yeah. Oh, man. So this is a big one and it's a hard one because it's also something that I have started thinking critically about is I think we've all had experiences where we kind of change who we are and how we show up a little bit depending on who we are or who we're around and who we are talking to, right? Like I think we've maybe all had those friendships or those relationships where that can be your go-to person when you're just really on one and you want to vent about something and you want to spiral and you know that person will spiral with you or they want to spiral and they know that you will spiral with them. Being really aware of those behaviors and when you feel the urge to go spiral with that person or those people, maybe taking a step back and also maybe finding other ways to address those feelings is another big one. I feel like I just opened a big can of worms, but it's
Mm.
something that's really been on my mind and on my heart and something that I've been experiencing quite a
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah. So, one way that I'm hearing what you're saying is being intentional that, or knowing that self care is choosing relationships that actually help us heal and move forward and don't enable ways that we may self sabotage or be stuck, even if it might feel good in the moment.
100%. And I'm not telling anybody to dump their friends or dump their people. But what I am saying is that if you're maybe in a position where you are a little bit more vulnerable or you're feeling more down, that may not be the time to call your friend that you know will go down the spiral with you. Like maybe hang out with them when you're in a good place, that when you're stable, your foundation is a little more stable. As opposed to maybe when you're feeling more vulnerable. And if you are feeling more vulnerable, maybe that's a good time to reach out to a friend who can maybe help lift you up a little bit more, and knowing the difference.
Yeah. When I think about playing that out, I think about how sometimes the friend who will spiral or vent with you or say how someone else's fault and not yours, you might not want to call them, but if you call all of your securely attached or healthy friends, sometimes they may not know how to validate. Like
Mm-hmm.
they're so quick to fix or to tell
Yep.
you it'll be okay that it makes you feel more lost. So it makes you want to regress and talk to this other friend. One of the things that I try to teach students, and I want to share with everybody here, I would love to get your thoughts on this, is you need to teach people how to treat you sometimes, and that includes your good friends too,
Yeah.
because they're not mind readers. So if I go to my friend and I say, "Hey, this is something that happened," and they immediately give me advice when I wasn't looking for advice, I just needed you to tell me that my feelings made sense. I need to communicate, this is what I needed instead, or this is what happened, and this is what I need to hear from you, and that's okay to do.
100%. I absolutely agree. And I have had experiences. I think it's about kind of knowing who to who to go to for different things, and really communicating what it is you need in that moment. And I've also started asking people when they come to me, like, okay, what's the vibe we're on? Are we looking for solutions? Are you just trying to vent? Like, let me know so
Mm-hmm.
I also know how to help you.
Mm-hmm.
So that it can kind of go all directions.
Yeah. Yes, that is healthy communication. So love that. Love it so much. Great. Well, what is something that you think it would be important for people to keep in mind as we start to come to a close?
Yeah, I think it's important to constantly constantly be dancing between accountability, grace, and curiosity when it comes to how we take care of ourselves. And that means
Mm,
giving ourselves grace when we need it. We have been in a period of extreme distress for a long time, and that still can't be dismissed. And even as we start moving towards what we once considered normal, I think the effects of what we've all experienced and how we take care of ourselves, I think we're all going to be forever impacted. And remembering to have a lot of grace is really important.
mhm.
Sometimes when you know better and you don't do better, and this is the accountability piece, it can also be really hard. Even for me, like I talk about wellness all day long, and there are still so many days where I'm like, girl, you didn't go outside and get some fresh air, or you were on TikTok late at night knowing you needed to wake up in the morning. And remembering remembering that when you know better, you do better. And also just keeping yourself accountable for those things that are going to feel good, and not beating ourselves up, but just um, knowing that all of our decisions and all of our behaviors do have different results attached to them. And sometimes it's like, what, I'll be sleepy tomorrow because I really want to watch this TikTok. Or sometimes it's like, what, let me put the phone down and actually go to bed, because it is really important for me to be fresh, and understanding the difference.
Yeah. TikTok is probably the blessing from 2020.
Yes.
For people who are not on TikTok and just think it's some other silly social media app, it has been such an incredible wealth of not only humor but information and connection and just growth and learning. but it definitely does have that double-edged sword of like the rabbit hole and losing hours
For
swiping
sure.
through these
Yes.
videos.
Yes.
But yeah, love that. I just want to come back really quick to the grace part, and I just really want to emphasize that because so many of us are super women and feeling like we need to do everything and not even being aware of when we are doing that, because it might just be so reflexive and automatic. So I just really want to say, it is okay for you to need to heal, for you to still not be okay a year later. And like you were saying, even past that, um, to not even be able to do the things you're supposed to be doing. So, I'm a healer by trade. I'm a therapist by trade. And I've been very clear and open with if you ask me anything about racial trauma, if you ask me anything about coping during the pandemic, I ain't got it. And I'm not going to try to
Mm-hmm.
force myself to get it because I have my own healing space and I'm not going to have any shame about that because that's where I am. I will point you to people who can do it, but I'm allow myself the mental health and space to take care of me right now. And that's fine.
I love that. I love that boundary. That's so
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. Great. Well, I've really loved our time together. I knew you were going to tell me things that weren't even on my radar. And I feel like I've been challenged. You gave me a little bit of therapy, gave me a little bit of coaching. So I appreciate that. Appreciate being able to receive that. Can you let our listeners know where they can find you?
Yes. So my podcast, Balanced Black Girl, has new episodes coming out on Tuesdays on your favorite podcasting app. And then you can find me on Instagram at Balanced Black Girl Podcast. And then my account is at Balanced Less.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Sheena.
Hey, so thanks for listening to today's podcast. If you enjoy what you learned today, it doesn't have to stop here. Check out the Black Girls Heal website at blackgirlsheal.org for more resources to help you heal from intimacy disorders like love addiction and love avoidance. The best time to start or restart your healing journey is now. You can grab a free copy of our 5-step roadmap to heal love addiction, love avoidance, and love deprivation by going to blackgirlsheal.org/roadmap. And if you're on social media, feel free to follow us at Black Girls Heal on Instagram and Facebook.